We often hear that silence is powerful, that by withdrawing, we can make someone realize what they lost. And while there is truth to that, the reality is that silence alone is not enough. It's not the absence of words that makes someone feel your loss. It's what they notice in your absence that shifts the dynamic. If all you do is disappear and hope they'll come running back, you're relying on wishful thinking, not strategy. Think about it. When someone walks away without warning, the initial reaction is curiosity. But curiosity is fleeting. If they assume you're just sulking, punishing them, or waiting in the shadows for them to reach out, your absence doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like an open invitation to reconnect on their terms whenever they choose. That's not power, that's passivity. And it's exactly why so many people go silent, only to find themselves ignored, forgotten, or even replaced. But when your silence is paired with change, when it carries an energy of forward movement rather than waiting, that's when it becomes something they feel rather than just notice. Because here's the truth. People don't just miss presence, they miss value. They don't crave what they take for granted. They crave what they no longer have access to but still desire. So if you disappear but your energy remains the same, if you're still posting sad quotes, checking his social media, subtly hinting at your pain, he doesn't feel your loss. He just sees your emotions playing out from a distance. He knows exactly where you stand. But when you go silent and your life expands, when your energy subtly shifts from seeking him to seeking yourself, that's when something interesting happens. It forces him to ask a question that wasn't there before. Why does she seem different? What changed? And this is the moment where the balance of power shifts. Not because you're manipulating, but because you've created a contrast between who you were when you were available and who you are now that you're not. Most people think that the key to making someone feel their absence is distance. It's not. The key is evolution. If you disappear and nothing about your energy, presence, or lifestyle evolves, then the only thing that's changed is the fact that you're not talking. And silence without transformation isn't power. It's just an empty void. But if you disappear and your world becomes bigger, if there's an undeniable shift in how you carry yourself, suddenly they don't just feel your absence. They start questioning their role in your life. They start wondering if maybe they overestimated their importance in your story. And that's the moment where you regain control, not because you played a game, but because you stop making them the center of your focus. Now, this is where a lot of people make mistakes. They assume that if they cut contact and then post a bunch of photos looking amazing, that's enough to trigger a reaction. But that's just another form of waiting for validation. The real shift happens when your transformation is so authentic, so unconcerned with whether they're watching, that it becomes magnetic. The best way to make someone feel your absence is to make sure that when they do check back in, they see something they don't recognize. And here's where it gets really interesting, because when someone starts to feel that shift, they don't just react emotionally, they react psychologically. People don't like to feel replaceable. They don't like to feel like their presence or absence didn't really change anything. And when someone sees that your world didn't just continue without them, but actually expanded, it creates a gap between how they thought you would respond and how you actually did. That gap is uncomfortable. That gap is what makes them rethink. So if you truly want to make him feel your absence, don't just remove yourself. Remove his ability to assume he still knows you. Become someone he has to figure out again. And let's be clear, this isn't about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about rediscovering parts of yourself that maybe you forgot when you were so caught up in trying to be enough for him. Maybe you stopped prioritizing your passions, your friendships, your own ambitions. Maybe you started shrinking to fit into what you thought he wanted. Going silent isn't about punishing someone. It's about giving yourself the space to return to the most magnetic version of who you are. And in doing that, you create the most powerful effect of all. You become less predictable. Because the truth is, people don't feel the loss of something they believe they can always get back. But when your silence is paired with undeniable growth, when your energy is no longer accessible in the same way, that's when they begin to question not just where you went, but whether they even still have a place in your world. And that question, more than any silence, is what lingers. So if you take one thing from this, let it be this: silence alone is never the answer. Transformation is. And when you truly commit to that, you won't need to worry about whether he feels your absence, because by the time he does, you'll already be somewhere he never expected. When you go silent, it's not just about removing your presence. It's about replacing that space with something far more powerful: mystery. Most people don't realize this, but predictability kills attraction. If someone knows exactly where you stand, exactly how you feel, and exactly what you'll do next, they don't need to wonder about you. And when there's nothing to wonder about, there's nothing to miss. So when you pull away, the goal isn't just absence, it's uncertainty. It's creating a space where they no longer feel sure of their place in your world. And this is where most people make a critical mistake. They think that going silent means completely vanishing, cutting off all ties, and waiting for the other person to come searching. But silence isn't about hiding. It's about shifting the energy of the dynamic. It's about making them question what they thought they knew about you. Imagine this: someone pulls away from you, and instead of disappearing into sadness or making it obvious that you're waiting for them, you start moving differently. You become unpredictable. You're no longer responding in the way they expect. You're no longer available in the way they took for granted. Suddenly they don't know where you stand. And that shift from certainty to curiosity is what makes them feel your absence on a deeper level. Because here's the psychological truth: people are drawn to what they don't fully understand. When they were with you, they thought they knew you. They thought they had you figured out. And as long as they feel that certainty, they don't feel compelled to chase, to question, to reflect. But the moment they feel that certainty slipping away, the moment they sense that they may have misread you, that's when their mind starts turning. Think about it. How often do we find ourselves obsessing over unanswered questions? It's not closure that keeps people up at night. It's lack of closure. When something doesn't fully make sense, when a story doesn't have a clean ending, our brains try to fill in the gaps. And that's exactly what happens when your absence is paired with mystery. They start to wonder, did I misjudge her? Did I think she needed me more than she actually did? Is she really moving on, or is she just pretending? And once those questions start, they don't stop. That's the moment when your presence, ironically, through your absence, becomes something they feel, something that lingers in their mind long after they expected to stop thinking about you. Now you might be wondering, how do I create this sense of mystery without playing games? And that's an important question, because this isn't about manipulation. It's not about trying to make someone jealous or posting things just to get a reaction. It's about a genuine shift in how you carry yourself. One of the simplest yet most powerful ways to do this is through contrast. If you were always the one reaching out, always the one available, and then suddenly you're not, that's contrast. If they used to see you posting about your feelings and now you're posting about an exciting new experience, a new focus in your life, that's contrast. If they expected you to be waiting in the wings, but instead you're out there thriving in a way they didn't expect, that's contrast. And here's where it gets really interesting, because when you create contrast, you force them to reframe the way they saw you. They might have assumed you were the one who cared more, the one who was there no matter what, the one who would always be an option. But when you disrupt that assumption, you challenge their entire perception of you. And that challenge is what creates attraction. See, most people think attraction is about physical presence, but real attraction, the kind that lingers, the kind that pulls someone back in, is about emotional uncertainty. Not in a way that's toxic, but in a way that makes them realize they don't fully understand you anymore. And once someone starts feeling that uncertainty, they start seeking answers. They start looking at your old messages, replaying conversations, noticing things they didn't notice before. They start wondering if they miscalculated your value, if they underestimated what you brought to their life. That's when they feel your absence. Not because you disappeared, but because the version of you they assumed would always be there isn't. And here's the most powerful part. When someone starts feeling this way, it's not just about missing you, it's about missing how they felt when they had you. Because let's be honest, people don't just crave another person, they crave the feeling that person gave them. And when they start wondering if they lost something truly irreplaceable, that's when the real regret sets in. But here's the key. By the time they reach this realization, you won't be in the same place they left you. Because your job isn't to sit around waiting for someone to notice your worth. Your job is to step so fully into your own power, your own happiness, that by the time they do notice, you've already outgrown the version of yourself they once knew. This is where most people get it wrong. They go silent, hoping that the other person will suddenly wake up and realize their worth. But worth isn't something you convince someone of. It's something they witness. And the only way they truly witness it is if they see that your life is expanding without them. If they see that you aren't just gone, you're elevating. That's when your absence stops being just a missing piece and starts feeling like a profound loss. So, what does that actually look like? It looks like using this time not to wait, not to prove a point, but to genuinely become the version of yourself that someone would regret losing. It means throwing yourself into your passions, into your goals, into the things that make you, you, outside of that relationship. Because here's the thing, when they left, or when you left, they had a certain image of you in their mind. They categorized you in a way that made them comfortable. And as long as you remain that same person, that image stays intact. But when you evolve, when you start showing up differently, when you start exuding a new energy, suddenly they have to recalculate. They start asking themselves, did I really know them as well as I thought I did? Was I too quick to assume they'd always be there? And that's when the shift happens. Because when someone realizes that you're not just missing from their life, but that you're becoming someone they no longer have access to, it triggers something much deeper than just nostalgia. It triggers loss. And loss is different from missing someone. Missing is passive. It's longing without urgency. Loss is active. It's the realization that something is slipping away in real time, that something they once had the privilege of experiencing is now moving beyond their reach. Think about it. When we see an ex thriving, when we see someone we took for granted stepping into their power, it forces us to face a truth we may have ignored. They were always more than we gave them credit for. That's what makes someone feel your absence on a visceral level, not just because you're no longer in their life, but because your absence highlights what they failed to appreciate. Now, here's the key. You can't fake this. You can't just post a few carefully curated moments on social media and expect that to do the work for you. True transformation is felt, not staged. It's in the way you carry yourself, the way you interact with the world, the way you move forward without looking back. It's the undeniable confidence that comes from someone who is no longer waiting to be valued, but who is actively creating their own value. This is why silence alone isn't enough, because if all you do is disappear, they might notice your absence, but they won't feel it. What makes them feel it is the realization that you are stepping into a version of yourself that they never fully understood, never fully supported, and now potentially never fully get to experience again. And here's where it gets even more interesting. When someone sees you evolving, their first reaction isn't always admiration. Sometimes it's confusion. They might downplay it, assume it's temporary, tell themselves that it's all for show, but over time, as they keep seeing the shift, as they keep witnessing your growth, it becomes undeniable. And at that moment, the balance of power changes, because now they're the ones questioning what they had. They're the ones wondering if they miscalculated. They're the ones realizing that while they might have been content in their decision before, they're no longer sure they made the right one. This is why moving on isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to. Because when you truly step into your worth, the people who doubted it will feel it. Not because you forced them to, but because it will be impossible for them not to. So when you go silent, don't just wait for them to notice. Give them something to notice. Become so focused on your own growth that by the time they look back, the person they thought they knew is no longer standing in the same place. And when that happens, the real question won't be whether they miss you. It will be whether they even deserve a place in the life you're creating now. When you go silent, it's not just about cutting communication. It's about shifting energy. It's about redirecting the emotional investment you once poured into this person back into yourself. Because silence on its own, that's just an absence of noise. But silence paired with an undeniable shift in how you carry yourself, how you move through the world, how you focus on your own elevation, that's when they feel it. See, most people assume that going silent is enough to make someone realize what they've lost. But what really makes someone feel your absence is not just that you're no longer there. It's that your energy is no longer accessible. It's that you've reclaimed your emotional power. And now they don't get to experience the warmth, the attention, the presence that they may have once taken for granted. And this is where most people struggle, because silence, if you're not careful, can turn into waiting. It can turn into quietly hoping they'll reach out, subtly checking for signs that they're missing you, pausing your own progress in the hopes that your absence is making an impact. But true emotional detachment isn't about waiting for someone to notice you're gone. It's about creating a life so full, so expansive, so undeniably yours that by the time they do notice, they realize they no longer have access to you in the same way. This is what makes absence powerful, because the truth is, people don't always feel your loss immediately. They feel it in the moments they expect you to be there and you're not. They feel it when they reach for your energy and realize it's no longer available to them. It's when they notice that their messages don't get the same instant responses, that the little inside jokes that used to exist between you no longer have an audience, that their name doesn't light up on your phone anymore, not because you're playing a game, but because you're genuinely too busy living your life. And it's important to understand why this is so powerful. Human beings are wired to crave validation, to seek connection, to feel important in someone's world. When you remove yourself from someone's life, they will only truly feel that loss if they realize they no longer hold the same place in yours. If you're still emotionally tied to them, still lingering in their orbit, still subtly trying to provoke a reaction, they won't truly feel your absence. They'll feel your attempt to make them miss you. And there's a big difference. Think about it like this. Imagine walking into a room you used to frequent, expecting to find everything just as you left it. But instead you walk in and realize the entire space has changed. The furniture is different. The energy is different. The things that used to make you feel at home are no longer there. That's what it feels like when someone comes back, expecting the same version of you, only to realize that you've moved forward without them. That's what shakes people, not just the silence itself, but the change that happens within it. Now, this isn't about being cold or spiteful. It's not about proving a point. It's about recognizing that the most powerful thing you can do for yourself, and the thing that will make them truly feel your absence, is to stop giving them the emotional real estate they once occupied. Because the more energy you spend wondering if they're thinking about you, if they're missing you, if they're regretting their choices, the more you keep yourself tethered to them. Instead, that energy should be redirected into something greater, into you, into your passions, into the things that light you up, into experiences that remind you of your own value, not just as someone they might miss, but as someone who is worth so much more than waiting for someone else's realization. Because here's the reality. The more you pour into yourself, the more you step into your own power, the more undeniable you become. And when someone sees that you are no longer emotionally dependent on their validation, when they realize that their absence didn't break you, but built you into something even stronger, that's when they feel it. That's when it hits them. Not just that you're gone, but that the version of you they once had access to no longer exists. And that's the kind of absence people remember. So if you're going silent, make it count. Don't just disappear, elevate. Don't just remove yourself, elevate, define yourself. Because the goal isn't to make them chase you. The goal is to become so deeply connected to your own growth that by the time they realize what they lost, you're too busy thriving to even notice. When you go silent, the real power isn't just in the absence, it's in the transformation that happens within that silence. Most people think that silence is about withholding communication, but it's not. Silence, when used correctly, isn't passive, it's active. It's not just about what you take away from them, it's about what you build in yourself. And this is where most people get it wrong. They think, if I just stop talking to him, if I just disappear for a while, he'll realize what he lost. But it doesn't work like that, because if all you do is remove yourself, but remain emotionally stuck in the same place, they don't feel your absence. They just notice your silence. What really makes someone feel your absence isn't just that you've stopped communicating. It's that you've shifted in a way that forces them to reevaluate your value. It's that they look at you now and realize that the version of you they thought would always be accessible no longer exists. And that's where true absence is felt, not in your physical distance, but in the energetic shift that makes it clear you're no longer operating at the same level. Here's what that means in real terms. When you go silent, you don't just pause your life and wait. You redefine yourself. You expand in ways that make it undeniable that you are no longer the person they took for granted. You develop new habits. You build new confidence. You immerse yourself in new experiences. Because the truth is, people don't miss you when you disappear. They miss you when they see that you've evolved. Think about it. When do we feel the strongest sense of loss? It's not just when something is taken away, it's when something grows beyond us, when we realize we no longer have access to something that was once ours. If you disappear but remain the same, they can always assume you're still there, waiting in the background. But when you disappear and re-emerge as someone they don't even recognize anymore, someone stronger, happier, more confident, that's when it truly registers. So what does this look like in action? It means using your silence as a tool for self-mastery. If you were once emotionally reactive, this is your time to cultivate emotional control. If you used to be overly available, this is your time to create boundaries and reclaim your time. If you felt lost in the relationship, this is your time to reconnect with yourself so deeply that no one ever gets to define your worth again. Because let's be clear, when someone sees that you are thriving without them, that's when they start to wonder. That's when the questions creep in. Was I wrong about her? Did I underestimate her? Is she actually better off without me? And those questions, those quiet moments of realization are far more powerful than any message you could ever send. But the key is, you're not doing this for them. That's the distinction. If you make your evolution about their reaction, you're still giving them power. You're still operating from a place of hoping they'll notice. The real shift happens when you genuinely stop caring about their perception and start living for yourself. When you stop measuring your progress by whether or not they reach out and start measuring it by how deeply fulfilled you feel within your own life. And here's what's ironic. That's the exact moment they do start noticing, because human nature is wired for attraction to strength, confidence, and self-assuredness. We are drawn to people who are moving forward, who radiate certainty, who are no longer seeking validation. When you step into that space, your absence becomes something they don't just notice, it becomes something they feel. Now, let's talk about the resistance that might come up, because for a lot of people, the hardest part isn't going silent, it's trusting that silence will work. It's the fear that if you stop reaching out, if you stop making yourself known, they'll forget about you entirely. But here's what you need to understand. The people who truly valued you will always fill the space you once occupied. And the people who don't, they were never yours to begin with. That's the reality. The person who can walk away without a second thought was never going to show up for you in the way you deserved. And if someone only realizes your value once you're gone, then they never truly saw it in the first place. That's not your loss, it's theirs. So if you're in this space right now, wondering if your silence is enough, I want you to shift the question. Don't ask, will he notice? Ask, what am I building in this time that makes me so deeply fulfilled that I no longer need him to notice? Because when you focus on that, when you pour into yourself, when you evolve into the version of you that even you didn't see coming, that's when everything changes. That's when he feels it. Not because you made him, but because your absence speaks louder than any words ever could. If there's one truth you need to hold on to in this entire process, it's this. Your silence is not about punishing him. It's about liberating you. Too many people approach going silent as a tactic, as if the goal is to make him feel a sense of loss so overwhelming that he comes running back. But here's the reality. If you're still waiting for that reaction, you're not actually silent. You're just speaking in a different way, hoping he'll listen. True silence is not about making a statement to him. It's about shifting your focus back to yourself. And that's where most people get stuck. They think, okay, I won't text him, I won't call him, I won't engage. But internally, they're still wrapped up in the same emotional energy, checking his social media, analyzing his behavior, wondering what he's thinking. And that's the problem. Because silence isn't just about cutting off communication. It's about cutting off the attachment to his validation. The real power of your absence isn't in what he feels, it's in what you gain. The moment you stop waiting for his response is the moment you start reclaiming your power. And that's when everything shifts. Because silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's the space where transformation happens. Think about the most powerful moments in life. They're rarely found in chaos, in loud declarations, in desperate attempts to be seen. They're found in stillness, in the quiet strength of a person who knows their worth so deeply that they no longer feel the need to prove it. That's the energy you need to step into. Not just ignoring him, but elevating yourself. So what does that actually look like? It means shifting your focus from how do I make him feel my absence to how do I make myself so fulfilled that his absence no longer matters. It means redirecting all the energy you once poured into him, whether it was through affection, attention, or even frustration, and investing it into yourself. Not just in a superficial, let me show him what he's missing kind of way, but in a deep, personal way that has nothing to do with him at all. Because let's be clear, if your happiness is still tied to whether or not he notices, you're still giving him control. And that's the opposite of what you want. The real shift happens when you no longer care whether he notices or not. Because you've built a life that is so full, so rich, so deeply satisfying that his presence or absence is no longer the defining factor. And here's what's interesting. When you truly detach, when you stop measuring your worth by his response, that's when he actually feels your absence the most. Because he expects you to still be there in some way, maybe not physically, but emotionally. He expects you to be watching, waiting, reacting. And when you don't, when you stop playing the game entirely, that's when he starts to wonder. Because people don't just miss what's gone, they miss what they no longer have access to. If he still feels like you're energetically available, he doesn't actually experience your absence. He just notices your silence. But when you truly remove yourself, not just from his world, but from the attachment to his world, that's when it hits him. And the best part, by that point, you won't even be thinking about him because you'll be too busy creating, growing, thriving. You'll be too busy living a life so full that you look back and wonder why you ever waited for him to see your value in the first place. That's what this is really about. Not about getting him to chase you, but about breaking the cycle where his recognition determines your worth. Because if he couldn't see it before, you shouldn't have to disappear for him to finally get it. And if he does get it too late, that's his loss, not yours. So the question you need to ask yourself